question is where are your priorities? My desire to be great at something always outweighed going out with my friends, watching some extra TV, playing video games, staying up late, eating garbage food. It always outweighed it. So when I would put my mind to something, I saw it through. So even though I hated my first year of lacrosse, I was gonna play the whole season. And my father and my mom, they were always the same. When I started karate, they're like, "Are you sure you want to start karate?" Yes. Okay, then you have to stick with it. How long? Well, you have to stick with it until you get your black belt. A little did I know that's a 5 to 6 year commitment, but I did it. So my parents were never pushy. They let me try anything except for football. Uh, and once I started doing something, I had to see it through. So my mindset has always been, if I'm going to be here, I might as well try to kick everyone's ass while I'm here, right? So the difference with lacrosse was when I came back, it was more so out of, I'll show you guys. I had never experienced that before. Because like I said, as I was a very lucky person, as a gifted athlete, play soccer, play, anything I picked up, I was good at. Lacrosse was the first time I said, when I realized you have to be awesome with this stick in order to do anything athletically out here. So it was more so out of like, I want to show these guys up, and I actually want to take the spot of some of these guys who've been making fun of me. Like my goal was to make varsity at Springfield High School. Like that's where my goals stopped, because all I cared about was being good enough to take somebody's spot who's been kind of telling me I can't do this.
I think that's really important. I think that's probably what makes you elite. Like I think when you said I'm one of the few people that reaches the ceiling at something, it obviously takes that commitment. And it's pretty awesome to obviously you saw your father go through that stuff, and that's just the way stuff gets done. Kind of just monkey see, monkey do kind of mentality. I guess my next question is kind of like, in the lacrosse world, I think, and me knowing lacrosse, you were one of the pioneers of the face-off. Like I remember I used to face off when I was a kid, and it was just down set kind of battle for the ball. I didn't really know what the heck I was doing. If I was more athletic than the other kid, I probably was going to win. And you've transformed the game so much. So I guess maybe first talk about just kind of like when you kind of figured out like, all right, I know more than the other person. I can kind of figure this thing out. And then where did that come from? Because like we talked about, success leaves clues. No one was leaving clues for you in that sense. So how did you kind of figure that out on your own?
Yeah, that's a good point. You know what? Sometimes the example of what not to do is just as strong as the example of what to do. So for instance, like you said, like one-on-one face-off training before 2012, when the Faceoff Academy started, I tell kids and parents all the time, go on YouTube and look at face-offs before 2012. There was 1,000 different stances. There was 1,000 different ways of facing off. And then when you watch face-offs from like 2013 to now, everybody started to look the same. And it's because for the first time, we introduced a scientific approach to face-offs. So, I tell kids, I actually had the same approach as you because I was late to the game. When I play, I was never a fogo. When I was in high school, I faced off because I had a knack for it, but I didn't really put much effort into studying it. I just thought faster guy to clamp and pull the ball out would win. And then you stayed on the field. And I played, by the time I was a senior, I never came off the field. Man up, man down, offense, defensive midi, didn't matter. And then when I went to Penn State, I was recruited as a midi, not as a face-off guy. In fact, my senior year, I faced off and I played man up. And the only reason I wasn't on a normal midi line was because it got to the point where it was impossible to face off 25 times a game and play a midline. We tried. So when I got to the pros and they told me I was just a face-off guy, it was very weird. So for me, I kind of had the same approach as you. I was raw. Yeah, I studied other guys on film, and I would try to take things from their game that were, like Andy Corno, who was at Georgetown before me. We ended up having a great rivalry in college. I studied a lot of his film. I watched Paul Cannaby and I watched Chris Searcy, but I didn't take a scientific approach to it, which I still to this day kick myself because I was a knees guy. Like I could teach everybody the ins and outs of an Olympic lift, but I didn't apply it to face-offs for some reason. So in 2011, I blew my knee out just when I was really coming up in the MLL. And that summer, I spent on the couch rehabbing. And I remember like, whoa, like I really took this for granted. I worked so hard, and now I'm a professional lacrosse player. And I'm so focused on my strength training business that I just play lacrosse on the weekends and don't practice during the off season. And I was kind of disappointed in myself because I was like, I'm always somebody who's like, if you have the potential to do something and you don't do something with it, it's a crime. And so that's when I decided to apply biomechanics to face-offs, because I did a bunch of research and all I saw were guys out there teaching cheating, YouTube videos of these random idiots like teaching 9-year-olds how to tape their gloves so they can grab the ball out the ref saying, I'm like, there's no good knowledge. So I learned exactly what not to do. And it really bothered me because cheating, as you know, was just rampant. That's all face-offs were back then, is everyone's like, oh, you're a cheater. So I talked to a couple of my buddies, Chris Madison, Jerry Ragnese, and I'm like, look, I came up with a system for face-offs. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but the idea is instead of looking at moves, we should look at the angles and leverage in which we're approaching the ball in our stance, and we should tweak it to make the race shorter to the ball. So we taught a couple of clinics. I actually trained myself with the system, and kids immediately, Faceoff Academy was supposed to be a 6-stop summer tour, like for fun. And everywhere we went, parents were hammering our door down afterwards to come back. And I had a career season in 2012. I came back after a blown knee, and 9 months after I blew my knee out, I was breaking records. So we knew the proof was in the pudding. So that was kind of, I saw what not to do. I decided I want to create some kind of honor to this position. So we introduced biomechanics to it. And overnight, we changed the position, which is an awesome thing to think about.
Yeah. 2012 was my senior year of college. And I remember watching you go off. And it's so funny. You talk about the videos of people teaching the cheating. Cause I remember specifically a coach telling me when I took face-off, I feel like I was in middle school or maybe even early high school. And they just go, if you're not cheating, you're not trying.
Yep.
And I like, there's such a like something as a coach. And I think all of us would never say to a kid in a million years.
No.
That was it. That's what people were doing. People were like, that's the only way we can get an advantage.
Yeah. And you know what? 2 things. One, I would never tell a kid as a coach, I would never say something to him that I wouldn't say to my own child.
Right.
Right. My son's like, Dad, I don't think I can pass this math exam. Well, you know what? If you're not cheating, you're not trying. Right. And then on the other side of it, it almost cost us a position. Yeah. Because everyone's like, this has gotten out of hand. We should just get rid of face-offs because everyone's cheating anyway.
Greg, you mentioned something in your answer before about how you didn't for a long time recognize the way that you were able to break down your strength and conditioning teachings and relate it to face-off. But now I'm sure now you see the correlation, right? I mean, that's something that's inside your head that allows you to break things down in a systematic approach and apply it to many other things, including face-offs. So, I mean, that's something special. I just wanted to mention that you had that. And it was funny that you didn't recognize it right away.
Yeah, I just didn't. I didn't apply it because I think, look, in life, you can only spin so many plates at a time, right? And my whole life was very focused on being a successful strength coach in New York City, which was a rat race. So the idea that, hey, you already have credibility in lacrosse, so why not focus the biomechanics on that? No one ever said, hey man, why don't you just think about revolutionizing a position? It's like never, so yeah, it's funny, but sometimes the most obvious things are the hardest to see.
Last night, Jordan and I were talking a little bit about just so many of the changes that continually happen in lacrosse, especially in the face-off position. And that must present tremendous challenges for you in your system, and then also just being able to teach that to kids. So tell us a little bit about how you do that, and maybe how you feel about these continual changes, which at least from the outside appear like they're trying to negate the ability to dominate at the X.
Yes. So I get caught in the middle on this. It's almost like in the world of Republicans and Democrats, I am an independent. Same thing with face-offs. I love face-offs. I understand obviously the value of them, and no one takes the training of it more seriously than myself. But I'm also not the guy who pouts and yells on Twitter, leave it alone, because there are tweaks that can be made. Now, the problem, and I've been very outspoken about it, and it's probably why no one ever asked me, but the problem is you have 8 guys in a room who say they mean well for the sport and they want to do it for the sport. But if that was true, then wouldn't you bring in somebody who knows face-offs to help you with these rules? And I think, look, of course, anybody would say I should be on the committee because I coach face-offs, but I think I have proven at this point that I'm not one of these old school cheat at face-offs, leave it alone, never touch it. You guys don't know what you're talking about, people. I legitimately want to help. And if you look at, for instance, the PLL rules, those were my rules. Those were the rules I came up with. I had help from a bunch of different face-off guys. We asked, we assessed it. What are the problems? What do we not like? Let's get rid of it. What can we make to make it a more challenging face-off? Now, the problem is one, there's no face-off guy in that room. So the rules get changed every 2 years based on who's in the room. That is the error with rules committees, is if you have nothing but people who have skin in the game, then they're looking at, like, if I'm a coach and I haven't had a good face-off guy in 6 or 7 years and I've given up recruiting it, of course I want to get rid of face-offs, right? So, and that's unfortunately exactly what's happening behind closed doors. Now, out in public, what we're being told is, oh, well, the sticks get too mangled, or we've heard ridiculous, like kids have too many sticks on the sidelines. It's like, come on, man. We know you've gone 30% for 5 years. You want to get rid of it. And we know that because coaches have changed their votes after getting good recruits. So, spare me. So yeah, I think the rule changes, if you look at them though, have helped. And this summer, they wanted to get rid of the knee down face-offs. And I thought it was actually a decent idea. I was like, this is going to get rid of the sticks being mangled. It's going to help athletes compete at this position who have different styles. And it's going to make the face-off faster and even easier for coaches to coach. So I understand the evaluation situation and definitely the ego situation. Being a college coach and not knowing how to coach a position, you probably hate the fact you got to call Greg Gurenlian and ask for help. So I think it solved a lot of things, but if I said it out loud, I would have gotten tarred and feathered by the face-off guys and their parents. So I had to wait until now, where now my kids are coming to me going, I actually like this better. It's like, I knew it. You're welcome. But that's the problem, is they're getting close. They get close. They figure something out that works. But we could have solved this 8 years ago if they just would have brought me in the room and we just laid it all out together. So now we're getting little bits of it every 2 years, and it's hurting the kids. It's making, they're spending so much money and time on training, and every 2 years I have to sit around and wonder if I have a job anymore.
Well, that's where I was kind of going to go with it, is like, obviously teaching the skill is important. So like when you go to standing, the skills change and you adapt. But how do you adapt mentally? And then also, how do you teach the kids how to adapt mentally? Because, it's like, I put all this work, all this time, especially the kids that were going to college this year, the freshmen, like they put all this time and the work into their knee down thing. That's their thing. And then that's what they get recruited for. And now you've got to somehow get in their mind that that's out the window. Like, that's just what it is. It is what it is. You can control what you can control. That's out the window. You have to, push forward. Like, how do you approach that mentally, maybe for yourself when you were going through it, and then also like as a coach?
Yeah, we had to make a very important business decision. When the rule changes were announced, we had to make a business decision. Do we pander? And by pander, I mean, do I post on Instagram whining about the rule changes, how it's not fair, so that kids and parents will then DM me and say, thanks a lot for saying something, even though no one cares? No college coach is looking at my sob story on social media and deciding they're going to, Greg's really upset and he put a poop emoji on his Instagram. So we should probably change these back, which is what some people did. Or do we decide immediately to send a blast email out telling our kids, look, these are the changes coming. We want to get you out in front of it. We have been teaching you standing neutral grip from the inception of Faceoff Academy. So in 2012, as you remember, they used to call it traditional grip, right? But scientifically, that didn't make sense to us. So we, instead of going pronated or motorcycle grip, we also had neutral grip, and we started calling it standing neutral grip, SNG. And so we taught at every clinic, we taught standing neutral grip. We're like, you guys have to learn how to do this and knee down. You need to know how to do both. So when the rule change came, yes, I felt this is not fair to the kids in the middle of a pandemic to have to learn a whole new skill set. However, my violin was not very big because I have been teaching these kids since 2012. And if they weren't listening, you got to own that a little bit, right? So do I sit here and whine, or do I tell you, look, get up, get off of Instagram, stop whining, and we just posted. I mean, if you watched, we posted like 3 to 4 educational videos a week for free on our YouTube to try to get kids caught up. And we wanted to get out in front of it because I've always thought of sports this way, especially face-offs. If you're analytical, you don't have time to be emotional, right? If I lose a face-off, I could sit on the sideline and I could whine and complain until the next face-off, or I could feel sorry for myself until I hit the sideline and then start thinking about what I did wrong and what my opponent's doing. If I'm worrying about that, I don't have time to slam my helmet and cry. Right. So we made the decision that yes, kids are going to be upset because it seems like tough love right now. But 6 months from now, when our kids who are actually listening are the ones getting recruited, then that's when everyone will be like, yeah, okay, they were right. Like, they care. And that's what's happened, right? The 25 of the first 26 face-off guys in this recruiting cycle were Faceoff Academy guys. That's not a coincidence. It's because they jumped on board, learned the technique, and they got recruited. The guys who are still whining, still not recruited.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point with the like face-off guys are kind of already trained to have that mentality, that next play mentality. Like, yes. You know, there's nothing else you can do. You can't impact the game until the next face-off that happens. And what can you do to be ready for that face-off? And so I guess that makes total sense. Something that I didn't really think of. When you said that you have those guys, I forget what the numbers that you just used, but you know, a lot of your guys are going to the top, to being the top recruits. What, in your opinion, and maybe it's one thing or two things, and there's obviously a million different things, but one or two things that makes elite athletes elite, and it doesn't have to just be your face-off guys, but it could be maybe some things you've experienced in your life. But what makes those elite guys just different? Because obviously there's a lot of great athletes, a ton of great athletes in high school, great athletes in college, great athletes in the pros. But then there's those guys that are just a little bit different, and you see them all the time, and you just know, like, what makes them different? What makes them elite?
There's a couple of things. One is coachability. It's the number one thing. Great players want to be coached. And I know I experienced it. I was, Team USA. I'm a 14-year vet. Tell me what to do, coach. I'll do what what do you want me to do? The kids that are coachable will always continue their progression. And what I sell college coaches on when I'm helping with the kids recruiting is I'm insanely honest about their ability to be coached, because I don't care how good you are. If you stare at me with dead eyes when I say something, or if you're doing the same thing wrong 5, 6, 7 times I train you, or you're going to somebody else who's just telling you the wrong thing and you're taking, that's fine. I don't care anymore. Like, if you don't want to get better and you're not coachable, then I'm not putting any effort into it, because there's thousands of kids who do want to be coached. So the number one thing is coachability, your desire to be great and swallow your ego so you can continue to learn. I think the other thing is tunnel vision. And what I mean by tunnel vision is the really special guys want to beat the guys in the mirror. They don't care about what that guy did, or, what article was written about that guy, or how come he made that All-American team over me. They don't care. They just want to continue to be better than they were yesterday. And, my whole goal when I was playing professionally, I noticed that I was getting to that elite level when I stopped doing this. When I stopped caring about how I was compared to other people and only how I was compared to from the season before or the game before, that's what I hung my hat on. You know, I was like, when I leave this game, I want people to always say, you never wanted to play Greg in the second half. He learns, he reads you, and he improves himself. And that's the only thing you need. So I think the ability to be coached and the desire to compete with yourself are very, very special things.
Yeah, I agree. And, so I do a little bit of mental performance coaching. And like you, we've taken a systematic approach to that, right? There's a formula to it. It's not just about talent. It's about really learning what the steps are. Coaches always say, hey, focus, hey, concentrate more, get your head in the game. But no one really tells you how to do it. Do you kind of experience that with kids who don't really know how to kind of get that mindset and direct that mindset?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I spend most of my time because look, I try to tell these guys, I had to learn to harness it. I'm a very emotional person. You never had to guess how I was feeling on the field. Because lacrosse, honestly, that's what I loved about wrestling, was it was just such a release, a physical and emotional release where you could, I love the feeling of laying on the mat after a wrestling meet and just being spent.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm the same way. After every lacrosse game, my goal was to feel like that, because that means that I have nothing left in the tank. That's what I'm going to miss the most competing, is that feeling. But I tell guys, you have to be able to harness that. And I think that, it's hard. It's hard because our position is so ego filled. It's not, on offense, for instance, in lacrosse, a guy could get detwigged, he could run off sides, he could get a slashing penalty, but if he had a goal and assist, it was an awesome game. In face-offs, it's very simple. If I take 10 face-offs and I lost 7 of them, they look at the box score and I suck. That's the cold hard truth. So when you have to, my goal all the time is to train my athletes to constantly be learn from every face-off. If you sit on the sideline, because I did it, you sit on the sideline, like, oh, I lost that one, so right now I'm like 5 for 7. I gotta, that means I'm on track to be whatever for 10. Like, you do it because it's so ingrained in you. So when kids train with me every week, what I've actually started doing, I never used to take face-offs out of season, but now that I don't play anymore, I take 4 to 5 hours of face-offs a week with my players. And the reason I jump in there is to honestly teach them how to deal with losing. I only have a couple more years left before they're pumping me. So, I'll come in and I'll say, look, this kid is winning every faceoff, but he's doing the same move over and over. He's not going to get away with that. So line up with him, take 10 faceoffs with him, beat him 9 times. And with the move I know he's going to be susceptible to, and say, you got to fix this, or else this is going to happen to you on ESPN one day. So I'm trying to teach these guys, learn from the faceoff, be okay with losing in practice. You have to be okay with screwing up in practice, because if you're not, you won't be able to handle it on game day. If everyone pats your butt and tells you how good you are all the time, when you get into the game and you have to deal with adversity, you're going to crumble. And we can't have the one guy on the field who gets his own attention 30 times a game to crumble. So that's my whole aspect, the whole way I look at this.
Yeah, so vulnerability, right? That's the key word, right? Especially in practice, be vulnerable. So face-off and wrestling, a lot of similarities, right? We talk about time. I can wrestle, win a match, and that's great. Or if I lose a match, if my team won or not, I still lost. In basketball, football, we can kind of hide. Same thing with face-off. So it's interesting. So now that you're kind of out of out of playing, you're in coaching, and now you have a child, right? And I've seen videos of him, emulating you doing lifts and different things. Do you kind of have a thought process, a philosophy on kind of how you're gonna, work with him, bring him up in athletics, whether it's going to be directed or let him do his own thing? What's your thought process around being a dad? I can relate because I've had 2 kids that I've coached from youth all the way almost to high school, through high school. So interesting to get the perspective.
Yeah, no, people are, oh, is he going to play lacrosse? Is he going to, face up? I don't care, man. I don't care if he wants to play piano, if he wants to do ballet, if he wants to play lacrosse. All I care about is that he has empathy, that he knows what it's like to be a good teammate, and that he works hard. That's it. And if he does those three things, then I'm proud. And look, kids develop empathy very late. So my whole goal is to hammer empathy. And I feel like that if the world can use anything right now, it's more of that. So, I think being like we're going to enroll him into soccer this fall, God willing, with COVID and stuff. And I just wanted to be part of a team as soon as possible. If he wants to do individual sports later, great. I think that's what is cool about face-offs is it gives you the best of both worlds. It gets an individual feeling and you get to be part of a team. But that's the big thing. I think, caring about other people and wanting to be part of a unit. When we won the gold medal in 2018, it was because the coaching staff did such a damn good job of us really just do your job and cheer your teammates on about doing theirs. I tweeted out the other day, I'm a Ravens fan. The Ravens beat the Titans, and I know the Titans beat the Ravens last game, and they stomped all over their logo after the game. Yeah. And I saw some of the Ravens guys doing that to Tennessee, and I just kind of shook my head because I'm just a big believer. I've never been a trash talker. I just believe that celebrating with your teammates is way better and more impactful than celebrating at your opponents. And I just want Jax to learn that, and I think it's getting harder with social media. Kids are picking up things that are beyond, my whole world was my town and the people I knew in it growing up. These kids are seeing everything in the world now. So, that's my goal. My goal is to have him be a healthy, happy kid and know how to have empathy and be a good teammate.
Love it. Love it. And, I believe that and I know these guys are high level athletes, so their talent and everything they've done takes them places. But I believe that if you're still concentrating on what somebody did to you or somehow someone dished you last game, and that's your focus, you're not 100% focused on you and your team, right? And I think somewhere down the line that comes back and bites you. That's my belief, and that's how I try to teach kids. Don't let that go. Be there for you and your team.
Yeah, I never got caught up in the trash talk. Look, I think I give a lot of credit to wrestling and martial arts for the way I look at life. I never got knocked down by a comment. I never, my face never got bruised because you called me something. So in lacrosse, when you say some stuff, it's like, whatever, man, just come back out here so I can kick your ass. I'm not going to get into these words. And when I win, I'm not glad I showed you up. I'm just glad that I proved to myself that I could do this and my team won. Right. I've seen guys that are especially in my later years of my career, I know they circled the games against me and they were so excited about going against me that even if their team lost by 10 goals and they had the same amount of face-off wins as I did in a game, they'd go all over Twitter and be like, look at me now. And like, this guy don't get it yet. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say real quick, like, I thought it was interesting the way you said, like face-offs is kind of best of both worlds as far as team sport and individual sport. Cause growing up, and it's not something that had ever clicked to me in my head when I was a kid, cause I'm a kid and I was just kind of like doing what kids do. But later in life, my dad was it wasn't a rule, but he was kind of adamant about like, all right, you can do team sports, but like you should also find something individual for yourself. So I swam, I wrestled, even if it was like an art class, but it was something where I didn't get to rely on anybody else. I was just in it for myself. And it ended up being wrestling and lacrosse. And that just happened naturally. But it's funny you say that because I think there's so many lessons that you can take from both. And it's convenient that the face-off is truly the best of both worlds.
Yeah. So, yeah. But you know what? There are caveats to that. I would rather Jax didn't face off. One, I want him to have his own thing. But two, I know as look, I've had a lot of instances in which I've gotten great feelings playing lacrosse. But being a face-off guy is a very lonely world because if you're not having a great game, it's real lonely on that sideline. And then coaches who don't look at this the right way, a lot of times will just send the face-off guy to the corner of the field and you're left out of practice and stuff like that. So it's not, you don't feel a part of the team that much. So a lot of my talks with coaching staff is about how to keep your face-off guys engaged, not only cheering for each other, because that's hard, right? But also making sure that the guys feel like they're part of the team at all times, because it can get real lonely over there. And also, now I'm retired. Guys that I've played with, guys that I've won championships for, guys that I respect and I'm friends with, have said that we should get rid of face-offs on Twitter, right?
Right.
It's really tough every day to wake up and have to explain why you should exist. It eats away at you.
Yeah. So, hey, this is, you've given us so much great stuff, and this is probably a good place to kind of wrap it up. My last question would be, because the audience is a lot of young athletes looking for that, that success step. If you have one message, one thing to tell everybody, and you kind of touched on it before, but if you can just kind of go with again, one thing that young kids should remember if they want to get to that next level, one thing they can take with them.
I would say emphatically that if you want to be at a level, like we learn what level we want to be at by watching people reach that level. Go to the people who hit that level doing exactly what you do and only listen to them. And what I mean by that is, there are guys out there now with face-offs, for instance, who have never faced off standing neutral grip, but they want to make a quick buck, right? So they're teaching it. If I'm a father, I'm going to say, okay, you want to go to this guy? Let me see his game film. Let me see him doing what you do. Also, let me see his social media feed. Let me see what kind of person he is. Find somebody who is not just at the top of their game doing exactly what you want to do, because they can teach you all the steps they took to get there, but also the kind of person that you want to be like. That's why I'm so lucky. I had my father and I had a great mentor in Brad, and I had great coaches my whole lacrosse career. And I benefited greatly from that because I had examples of how to be and who to be. So, that would be absolutely my number one thing to go for.
Great stuff. Thank you so much. That's awesome. So, that's good. I just want to have one favor for you. When we started this podcast, for whatever reason, I didn't record the first question. So we can just really ask you that question again about how you got started.
Sure.
Then we can wrap it up. That would be awesome. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jordan, you want to go ahead and start with that again?
Yeah, sure. So I guess just talk to us a little bit about kind of how you got started, and then I guess the process to where you are now a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So the way I started was, I played sports from the time I was 6, but I never played lacrosse until I got to high school. Lacrosse was the number one sport at Springfield, Delaware County. It's where all the cool kids played. It was a perennial powerhouse. And I wanted to be part of that, honestly, because I wanted to be one of the cool kids. Yeah. And I learned very quickly that this sport was real hard. Even if you're a super athletic guy, you can't do anything on that field unless you make the lacrosse stick part of your body. And learning how to catch and throw is one of the most tedious and annoying things you could possibly learn, especially when everybody around you started playing 8 years ago. And coming in and being made fun of every single day at practice. I have the nickname The Beast, but people don't understand how it came from. I was given that nickname as a joke. I was about 150 pounds running around the lacrosse field trying to hit everybody because I'd never played a physical sport before. And I didn't know how to catch and throw. So the older varsity kids would yell, Greg Beast. And my best friends actually started calling me Greg Beast. So I got that nickname almost like Lil Jon as a joke. Now that I'm 6'1", 225, people think, oh, he just calls himself Beast. I'm like, no. Nobody has the guts to do that. But so I started playing, but I wanted to quit after the first year. I wanted to quit because it was so hard and I was so sick of being made fun of. I had never quit anything before, but I just thought it was going to be for the best so I could focus on other things. And the last practice, Coach Rick Johnson came up to me out of nowhere and put his arm around my shoulder and he said, I promise if you keep playing this sport, you'll light the world on fire. And I got back in the car and I told my parents, I was like, I'm going to keep playing this sport. I believe this man. He said it. So so matter-of-factly that I feel like I would let this guy down now. He gave me some faith, and I don't want to ruin that. So yeah, I completely dove in, and it wasn't because I loved lacrosse yet. It was because I wanted to take somebody's spot, somebody that told me I couldn't do it, somebody that told me I was wasting my time. They didn't want to be in my line in drills because I never catch the ball. All of those people I trained out of hate. And that lit the fire. And I came back my sophomore year, a completely different person, made varsity, and the rest is history. So, I learned at a young age what the power of one person believing in a kid can do. And, I think it's a big reason why I'm a coach now.
That's
Awesome.
yeah, great. Thank you so much. That's great. And by the way, you did that almost exactly like the way you did the first time.
You know what? To be honest, I've answered that question so many times.
Yeah, Greg, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And why don't you tell our audience how to, follow you, and maybe how to get find out about the Faceoff Academy and just learn about what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So on all handles, Twitter, Instagram, GregBeast32, and the Faceoff Academy on Instagram, Faceoff_Academy on Twitter. The Faceoffacademy.com is where we post all of our stuff. And I have a personal YouTube channel with lifting advice and Faceoff advice, which is youtube.com/Greg Gurenlian.
Great. Well, we have a lot of lacrosse listeners. That's one of a big part of our community, lacrosse and wrestling. So I'm sure they'll take you up on that. We'll be following you, and if there's anything we can do to help you and what you're doing and your mission, please let us know.
Yeah, and likewise.
All right.
All right,
Well, you have a great day, man. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Greg.
Stay safe.